But let's talk Sixers. We all like obits. We all like looking at dumpster fires, and that was one of them. And the pretty obvious guy to point to has to be James Harden, right? It just has to be. James Harden's been an MVP of the league. He's been a dominant player, and though he is not what he used to be, and he's now finally coming under the criticism of some on his own team, some who have coached him or worked with him, the idea of going down without firing every shot in the barrel, right? Without unloading the clip, which of course is an analogy. Please don't. Oh, Gottlieb gun reference. Come on, man. This is sports. He took 2 shots in the second half. He didn't make any of them. His defense, his rebounding was below the normal level of inactivity for James Harden. And I don't know how you react when you feel like something could be coming to an end, especially a season. Right? Desperation, in many ways, should be a great motivation. Right? If you really want something, if you truly desire something, you're going to do anything it takes, move any mountain to make it happen. That is, in fact, how it works. Well, at least that's how it tends to work. Like Tyrese Maxey last night, he's not a great player, but at least you saw the effort there of him trying to make it happen. Harden felt like a dog just chewing on a bone. I'm good. And then Joel Embiid, who, like one of the great thing about Joel Embiid is he didn't grow up here. So he doesn't have necessarily the predetermined bias to have to say the right thing. Right? He wasn't brought up in the AAU culture. He doesn't. There's a level of I don't give a you know what that is incredibly admirable. It really is. You know, it's interesting. One of my daughters is getting a chance to compete actually in Israel this summer. And when she posts about it, she sounds like somebody who has been trained on what to say and how to say it, right? And she hasn't. I haven't had one discussion about it. Like, I just want to say I'm so thankful to my trainer, to everyone who's helped me. This is an incredible honor. Like, it is like from the corporate, this is how you release a statement 101. Nobody's told her, but she grows up in our culture, and that's, quote unquote, how it's done. Embiid doesn't embody that. Right? There's some bad to it, but there's some great to it as well. Here's Embiid after the game on Harden.
We got him. Everybody expected the Houston James Harden, but that's not who he is anymore. He's more of a playmaker. I thought, at times, could have been, as all of us, could have been more aggressive. All of us, whether it's Tyrese or Tobias or, guys coming off the bench.
So he did couch it and say, like, look, he wasn't aggressive, but we all could have been more aggressive, which is smart, and it's accurate. Okay? So he's not completely throwing him under the bus. But I want you to compound the fact that yesterday on ESPN, Amari Stoudemire, who worked with the Nets when James Harden was in camp, he was a player development assistant, right? Which means, what are you doing? You're getting with guys, you're getting them in the gym, you're working them out. And he, on different instances, 2 different instances in one salvo, is like, that dude, he's not working. He didn't work, didn't come in shape. So this is Amari Stoudemire on TV, right? Remember, this is not generally the case that NBA players or former NBA players talk about the work ethic of a star player, but this was Amari.
I can't commit to that. If I'm the owner of the Sixers, I cannot commit to giving him a max deal. I just don't see the dedication that I would need to see from my top 75 player. You have to be able to have a certain level of determination and focus on being the best player you can possibly be, and also be there for your teammates when they need you the most. And if he's not capable of doing that, and as a max player, I'm not going to be willing to now give you a max contract if you're not showing me that you can handle the situation.
The 2 things that you don't want to be talked to me. We all have flaws. There are no flawless people, right? Everybody has a flaw. Jordan, Kobe, they had plenty of flaws. Hard to play with, hard to deal with sometimes. Neither of them really went left particularly well, to be totally honest. Right? Jordan's jump shot was kind of a line drive. Obviously, later on in his career, at times, he became a very good three-point shooter, but it was kind of a line drive. Like, nobody was perfect. There are no perfect people. There are no perfect players. But if you're missing a couple of things, or if people question your work ethic, if people question your competitiveness, if people call you a quitter, those are things which they're just non-starters for me, I think for most people. Right? Nobody wants but he quit on the Rockets. He quit on the Nets. And last night he quit on the Sixers. You have that quitting gene. Some people have the quitting gene, some do not. And I know you could sit here and go like, listen, Kobe didn't shoot when they're playing the Suns in the playoffs, and to make a point, like, okay. But that was also the only moment you could say that of Kobe Bryant's career. I would not excuse it, right? I didn't excuse it at the time. I don't excuse it now. On the other hand, you can kind of go back through a million other things. And again, Kobe was selfish. Kobe took bad shots. Like, he could go a whole game and not take a good shot. Kobe could be really tough to deal with. He could be confrontational. And yeah, there was a time in which he's like, I ain't shooting. And it was bad. But that's the only time in his career you could say that. And you could never say about Kobe Bryant that he wasn't prepared, that he wasn't committed, that he didn't have the work ethic. Amar'e Stoudemire calling out his work ethic? Compound it with the 3 different teams that he's quit on? And then you wonder, okay, what happens with Doc Rivers? And it's completely fair to say that team last night looked checked out. 1-2-3 Cancun could have been every time they brought it in the huddle. But it's also fair to point out that Doc Rivers did a hell of a job with that team when they were devoid of, was it $33 million in salary when Simmons wouldn't play for him? But the defensiveness of Doc Rivers, which we've seen over the past couple of weeks, like Doc Rivers, coaches usually don't come back at the media. They don't usually stand up for themselves this way, especially Doc, who's a guy who's generally treated with fairly kid gloves. And some of this is Philadelphia. Right? Philadelphia just wears people out. It does, especially when you're not a Philadelphia guy. Here's Doc Rivers when he was asked about his job security.
I don't worry about my job, Howard. I think I do a terrific job, and if you don't, then you should write it, because I worked my butt off to get this team here. When I first got here, no one picked us to be anywhere. And again this year, the same thing. So if that's how anyone feels, write it, and I'm going to feel secure about it.
It's a results-based business. And that's
it is, but you don't do it every year. Every time you're wrong, should you lose your job? No. So it's the same thing, all right? But listen, if you believe that, then go with it. I know what I did this year, and I feel very good about that. But, again, if you believe that, Howard, then you just run with it.
Yeah, I think he's talking to Howard Beck, who, of course, is a staple of Philadelphia media. I think it's completely fair to point out the collapses, to point out how disinterested some of those guys look, the lack of fight, the lack of ability to communicate and get James Harden competing last night. Like, that is coaching. It's also fair to point out that they hired they hired Daryl Morey, and I'm sure that James Harden last night, I don't want to play for this guy. Right? And now he has a player option, or they can extend him, and it feels like Doc Rivers is saying, you know what? You can have him. You can have it. I'm good. You know? I can go into TV, or I can go coach the Lakers. That you don't get that level of defensiveness and combativeness. And that's a nice, gentle amount of combativeness, but that's also Doc. You don't get that unless there's another vine as you're swinging through the jungle. There's another bus on the way that you can catch. You know there's another gig out there, or just the gig that you have, you're like, eh. The Sixers are an abject disaster, despite the fact they have some amazing talent on the team. And when you can trace James Harden's career, when you saw James Harden's performance, when you feel the negative energy from a coach who had to be frustrated, one, with the acquisition on some level, and two, with the player that he had, and three, with the performances that he had. And then you have his co-star saying he's not that guy anymore. A former coach and former star player saying doesn't have the work ethic or the drive. I think we know the root of the issues. The only question is, what do the Sixers do to try and fix it?